You ever walk out of a conference with your head spinning, half inspired, half overwhelmed? I'm up early this morning, the day after the Glamping Show Americas, and that's exactly how I feel. And if you weren't there, I'm sorry, you missed a great show.
Yes, they did. Chris Dube, also known as the Glamping Guy, thank you very much for your wonderful video, which you can catch on YouTube. Now, if you were anywhere near Colorado at the end of September, you'll know exactly what we're talking about today, the Glamping Show Americas. It was an extraordinary few days of learning, networking, inspiration, and let's be honest, a few late nights. From industry leaders and creative newcomers to global innovators and passionate independents, this year's show was bursting with energy, ideas, and collaboration. So I thought, who better to join me for a debrief than my wonderful co-conference director and good friend, Steph Curtis-Raleigh. Together, we're going to take you behind the scenes of the show, our favourite sessions, the biggest takeaways that inspired us the most, and what's next. So join us as we rewind to that moment in the airport cafe, tired but buzzing, dreaming up this very episode.
My name's Kyle. I'm out of the Virgin Islands. Right now we're breaking ground on a glamping resort in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. And this is my first time to the Glamping Americas show. I heard about it and I've been looking at it. I've been stalking you guys' page for like weeks and I was just like, man, I can't miss it. I gotta go. I came and I got so much value out of this, guys. The speakers were great. The presenters were great. The guys outside with all the setups and all the different glamping structures, that was amazing. I could sit here and talk to you guys all day. It was great. Just don't miss it next year. Please be here. This was an amazing experience, guys. And I'm just grateful that I came and I made it.
Welcome to the Glamping Americas podcast, the place for inspiration about the business of upscale camping, glamping, and luxury outdoor guest accommodations. I'm Sarah Riley from the Glamping Academy, and I'm working with my friends at the Glamping Show Americas to share everything you need to know about new trends, events, business models, and investment potential in the rapidly growing world of luxury camping that delivers an experience. Interest in this industry is exploding, so if you want to be the first to find out what's hot and what's not, subscribe here and check out the show notes for more exciting news and links. And be sure to add the next Glamping Show Americas to your calendar for the 29th and 30th of September 2026 near Denver, Colorado. See you there. Steph, it's so lovely to hang out with you. We pretty much speak every day, but face-to-face the last time was in a cafe in the airport, and we were both having a very well-deserved gin and tonic after the show. And in that moment of, yes, the gin and tonic was maybe speaking, and we said, wouldn't it be a great idea if we both went on the podcast and had a little bit of a think about what happened in America with the show and what our favourite bits were and what we're looking forward to about next year. And so here we are.
Here we are. Well, thank you very much for inviting me onto your podcast.
Steph, I couldn't wait to get you on because quite honestly, it's just great hanging out with you and having a chat. And we've been thinking about already and playing with what's going to be on the agenda for next year. And we have thought long and hard about how can we surpass what we did this year, because we had some amazing speakers and it was incredible feedback. So what are you thinking? How are we going to do as well as we did this year?
It's a tricky one because we had such brilliant speakers this year and we'd never done it before. So we had a blank canvas to create something this time. And our gut feeling was that people wanted to hear more operators, more people actually in the business and their various stories. And that seems to have been so far. Obviously, we're waiting for feedback from the post-show survey, but what we've gathered, what we've seen on LinkedIn, that seems to have been very well received. So it's finding another group of really very different types of stories, different types of financing, different types of operation, people doing things in a slightly unusual way, perhaps, to give ideas, because every business is different. And so I think we really managed that this year with financing, with different styles, big operation, small operation, multi-million pound businesses and smaller businesses.
I think as well, and you just said it there, finding those people who are doing it differently, because this industry is really interesting in that people kind of look at ways to do things that bypass the traditional, not just in structures, not just in service and guest experience, but also in how they're going to finance, how they're going to set up, where they're going to put it, how they're going to get permissions. It seems everyone's really clever at just finding a different way, a different route. And I think that's why it's so great to come together at events like this, because everyone can share those ideas. And that's what was really going on. That was definitely the power in the conversation at lunchtime outside by the structures. Everyone was just talking about all these different things. And particularly interesting was the conversations going on through the AGA, where we were all having some drinks outside in the sun, a couple of tacos, and we were just bumping into lots of different businesses, and we were all sharing these ideas, and it was just incredible. I mean, like, did you find that the energy seemed really up this year? It seemed really inspiring.
It did. It seemed a really special year. And I mean, this must have been my 8th time, and yours as well, of attending that show. And I don't know whether it was just because I felt more involved by being a co-conference director this time. So I felt really part of the team, and that was a lovely feeling. So I had plenty to talk to people about. But I really loved the way people just came over and introduced themselves if I hadn't met them before, told me about their businesses. And it felt very special. It was a lovely evening, the AGA evening. I thought that I was so tired after the first full day of our conference that we were never going to be able to sort of last it through. But amazingly, after a glass of wine and one of those nice cocktails, I picked up, and yes, it was really, really great to see people and some of the exhibitors as well that we didn't have so much of a chance to talk to because we were in the conference room. So yes, I think that there's still that enthusiasm there in the industry. And I think what you were saying before about people doing things in a different way, I think it's a very creative industry, a creative sector. It's not traditional hospitality. So people that come into it, they may not have been in hospitality. Probably most of them haven't been in hospitality before. So they've got a different way of thinking about it. And I think that necessity is the mother of invention, or whatever the expression is, that sometimes when you've got a limited budget, but you've got a lot of passion and you want to create something, then it means that you come up with very interesting solutions to achieve what you want to do, whether that's in the design of your location or the way in which you manage to fund it. I mean, take the Ferncrest, Brian and Joanna Linton's talk about seller financing. I thought that was fascinating, and perhaps a way that some other people in the room might now go ahead and fund their businesses. And then we had Leslie, we had a lot of talk about crowdfunding as well. It's something that you were championing for people. So yes, it was positive, but there were also cautionary tales there as well. People had their fingers burned. And so they were really great about offering their opinion on cautionary tales. I think that Tori and Seth were particularly strong on that point about, what was it they said? Don't ask for forgiveness or whatever.
Ask for permission.
Ask for permission, don't ask for forgiveness. And so yes, I think that creativity really came out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Bolt Farm Treehouse is an incredible story. And the fact that they were able to come to the event and they were just so generous with their time and their advice. I mean, I personally saw them standing for an hour after their
I was going to
session,
say that.
talking to the
And
audience members.
hours the following day before their session. I mean, clearly they brought a little bit of the sort of glamour to the event, shall we say. Amazing looking couple, a bit of celebrity around them, but very, very humble and down to earth when you actually spoke to them, and relatable, which was what I was hoping, because not everybody who's setting up is going to be a rock star or have a similar sort of story or following to them, but everybody could take something from their talk. And you know what struck me, and it was such a small thing, and they gave like 23 different points of advice to operators, and which were all brilliant. But one thing that really struck me, and I remember saying it to you, is they said, make sure that there are always people in the photographs that you take on your site, but make sure they've always got their back to you, because looking at somebody in the face is too sort of intimate and it's distracting. But you want to show your space as being occupied and being used. So put people in there, just to take the photo from behind. And it seems so obvious, and I must have seen it a million times on social media, but nobody'd ever really said it before, and it hadn't really ever occurred to me.
Yeah, it's that psychological thing, isn't it? That if you don't see the face, you can imagine yourself in their place, and that
Yeah.
means the guest or potential guest, the ideal customer, potential customer, is going to go, oh, yes, I can see myself sitting in that hot tub, overlooking that amazing view from the cliff top. I want to go there. Whereas if they see someone's face, it feels a bit more kind of, it's almost like
you're
a
in their
barrier.
space.
Yeah, and like you say, there were 23 tips just in that presentation alone, as well as loads of other really inspirational kind of back story to their whole setup process.
Yeah.
But that was just their presentation, and there were so many others, and all the others, they were just so generous. I mean, Isaac French, when he was talking about his story of Live Oak Lake, and Joanna and Brian Linton, as you said before, Camp Ferncrest, with how they got finance, and Arian Hillary from Balance Farm. I mean, they were just brilliant. Poor Hillary, she'd hurt her ankle and she was still prepared to get on stage with crutches.
They were the cutest couple. It was so nice to have couples. I wasn't expecting that when we first started, when we approached these people. We thought maybe one or other of them might turn up, didn't we? But we didn't expect to have 3 actual couples. But considering when you looked around the audience, how many people were there hand in hand or sat next to one another, and they're going into this as a couple. So I think it gave another insight into people who are working together and creating their dream together, and how the dynamic works. And I thought that Ari and Hillary were so charming, because he's so sort of in awe of all of her abilities as a hospitality provider. And he was a bit like the mad professor. He came up with all of these fantastic AI solutions to sort of learning about the guest and providing a brilliant guest experience. But then I just loved it when he told the story about some of the things that he'd done that had gone slightly wrong. Like when he tried to deliver food to the guests using drones, and it arrived sort of like completely shaken up and covered in flies, and blew the hat off the person opening the door. And then even better, he said about he'd created a robotic dog to deliver toilet paper. And he said, who knew that children would find robotic dogs so scary? Which just gave everybody such a brilliant mental image of Yeah.
He's so funny. He was so full of these stories. And it was lovely to make what others might consider to be quite a dry subject, which is AI and AI in hospitality, just so interesting and awe-inspiring. And actually, they weren't even offering a solution to people. They were just sharing what they'd done for their own business. And yet people were standing up in the crowd saying, but can you share that with us? Can we please have what you've done?
They did. He said, I will chair a Zoom, a get together after this event for people who are really interested, because I'm sure you felt it too, Sarah, that he was holding himself back, because if he'd have been unleashed, he could have really drowned us all in his knowledge of AI and the programming and all of these things and he tried to keep it accessible as much as possible, even when the questions started to get quite technical. But they did say they would host people who wanted to get more in there after the event, and just in the same way that many of the other speakers like the Bolts also provided, and yourself, further information, further sort of resources for people to find out more following the talks, which I thought was brilliant value.
And I think everyone has to realise that if they do need to speak to any of our speakers about anything they heard, they just need to get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that that message gets through, because there's so much that can be done at events like Glamping Americas, but there is still only limited time, because you've got all of the structures to look around, all of the people in the expo to speak with, because you come with a great big long list of things that you want to get done while you're there. And there's always stuff that you don't manage to speak to people about.
Yeah, and that's a shame. I mean, it felt really bad, didn't it, when we had to stop the questions sometimes, because they were such great questions and people were really engaged. But knowing that all of the speakers were very, very generous about hanging around afterwards and answering more questions. There's one thing that also struck me afterwards was how great was that the first session, which I did moderate, but it was the question of minimum stays, and we had Sarah Dusek on the panel, and we were going through some data about sort of whether people were dictating a minimum stay period, and this is something I know your group, Sarah, is discussed quite a lot. And Sarah Dusek, she didn't sit on the fence there, did she, at all? She was like, no, you shouldn't have minimum stay periods. You should accept, single night bookings. If you're starting out in particular, you shouldn't do any different to the B&B down the road. You should accept all types of bookings. And I thought that was really, she was so sure, she was so certain about it. And I think people in the audience found that really refreshing, that somebody was strong in their opinions on something like that, which often I think people have got differing views on.
They definitely have. And it's interesting because a lot of what I find when I'm working with business owners, particularly small business owners, is they get stuck in this decision paralysis where they just keep going over, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And they just keep going around in circles, and then they end up just getting stuck and not really doing one thing or the other, and not doing it very well. And the fact that Sarah just said, no, you shouldn't do minimum nights. You should just allow people to book what they want when they want until you're famous. When you're famous, then you can start saying, yes, I'm only going to allow a minimum 2 nights. But it's something we're seeing in the UK more and more, that people are on their sites, they are saying you can only stay if you book 2 nights. And so it's really interesting that she said that. I was really quite surprised, because I thought she would be a bit more flexible, but she was very strong about that point. And I've actually floated it with my Glamping Owners Club since then. And many of them have said it does depend on the size of the business. Because if you have a larger business and you can pay for the cleaners, then you can understand why you would accept anyone for any number of nights, anytime. But if you are a smaller business on your own and you're the one doing the whole business and the cleaning and changeovers and the meet and greet and the customer experience and marketing and everything, so you're basically the one that does everything,
Yeah.
it can seem quite overwhelming just to do one night stays all the time when you are offering such luxury, because luxury and an amazing experience, an amazing service takes time to set up. It's all the little details, it's all the little touches, and that takes time. So if you're doing that every single night, it can be very overwhelming to the smaller business owners. So I think there does have to be that recognition that there are smaller and larger businesses with more staff.
Absolutely.
or
I
less.
mean, she built a $100 million business.
Yes.
So obviously, it's interesting that she took that view. I can completely see the other side of the argument as well, and I also can see the benefit of some of these dynamic pricing sort of software, AI-driven models that can help take these difficult decisions away from people. But yes, it's so refreshing in a world where people try to cover all bases and try to sort of please everyone, when somebody actually comes out and gives a definitive opinion on a subject that's less than sort of black and white. So that was great. I mentioned earlier on about creativity. Isaac French's talk stood out to me in that he was an incredibly accomplished speaker.
Yes.
God, he just made everyone relax almost immediately because he was completely in control of the stage. He didn't have a handheld. He had a sort of radio mic, and he was so used to public speaking, it seemed to me. He was absolutely brilliant at it. But also, he managed to combine all of the amazing creative projects he's worked on, as well as some of his favourite projects that other people have done. And he showed what's possible if you've really got an eye and talent. But also, for me, what I took from it was landscaping. A lot of his projects were heavy on the landscaping, and that's why they had the wow factor, because they really brought the nature right up into the accommodation and onto the accommodation. And he said that landscaping was the most cost effective, or the best return on investment that you can make. And that's what I took from that talk, was what you can do with really clever planting. And and what an amazing speaker he was, really.
He really was. There were so many amazing speakers this year. I have to mention also my panels that I had. The marketing masterclass with Ben Wolf, who we know is incredible, is just so well known, famous, in fact, in the industry, really clever, both for marketing, but also for operating and starting up the most amazing sites. But next to him was Hayley Fleming from Ozark Mountain Retreat, and she was just so incredible and grounded in her view, because she was a small business owner. She is very, very good at marketing, and she had a slightly different traditional twist on things, which I think was really appreciated, because you have this big view of marketing and then this very localized, very traditional view of marketing. And I know that the audience, because of all the questions they were asking, really got a lot out of that. And that was definitely one of those sessions that I was quite sad that it ended as quickly as it did.
I thought you did an amazing job, because it was so well balanced. I mean, you have Ben, who doesn't any longer accept marketing clients with a turnover of less than $1 million. It's what he said in questions. And then you've got Hayley, who's got very little budget, does it all herself. And yet they both so confident and had so much to say.
Mm.
And I think that all of the audience could find some sort of middle ground really in ideas for marketing, whichever sort of level their business was at. I always found it interesting how some of the same people asked questions at different times. So you started to really get a sense of their businesses as well as the speakers.
Yes, yes. You were starting to really pick out what it looked like for them when they walked out of the show and what they were dealing with back in their business.
Yeah, and your wellness panel was brilliant as well. And I thought, well, obviously we had the Bolts back there, but we also had Leslie, didn't we?
Yes, Leslie Martin. Oh, Leslie, she's so amazing. She's very much in the middle of launching her retreat, Lagon retreat. And who would imagine that they're launching a business at the middle of a crowdfunding campaign, of which she's doing incredibly well. And yet she still found time to sit on the stage and answer questions that people had in the audience to try to support other glamping business owners. I mean, this is why I love the industry. People are just so generous with the advice that they give. It's a really very supportive place. But wellness, it really is starting to take off, isn't it? It's
It
really
is.
starting to be a focus of every site.
I think it was really good that we could provide examples through the Bolts and through Leslie of ways in which it was being adopted, because it's such a nebulous term, wellness, isn't it? And it can mean so many things. I think the same with retreats. People know it's a big thing and they know that it could probably benefit their businesses, but they're quite sort of unsure as to how to approach it if they've not done it before. It's big enough to open a glamping site, but then to say, well, right now, open some form of spa or, start a different type of business with retreats. It's another step out of the comfort zone. So I thought that was very helpful. I thought that Tori and Seth said some really interesting things about being authentic and not necessarily feeling that you have to copy what's gone before, whether it be the sort of slightly Eastern mystical type, Buddhism, incense and all that sort of thing. Do your own thing. I also really liked the way that Leslie wasn't intimidated at all in standing up for her opinions and disagreeing with Seth, saying, well, no, I'm doing it this way or whatever. So it made for a really lively discussion, I thought. And again, I felt it could have gone on longer with the questions because people had lots to say.
But what about the first session on the first day? Because I would have to say it's probably the most popular session, which, given that it started at 8:30 in the morning, how I mean, that's just really incredible.
Started at 8:30 in the morning.
Whose idea was that? You know what time that means that a conference director has to get up in the morning to get
we
their
need our
coffee?
beauty sleep. I mean, my goodness. In the UK, my God, you wouldn't start something at 8:30 in the morning. We're all far too lazy. We wouldn't attend anything before 9:30. But yes, there were a lot of people in the room. I think also the expo hadn't fully opened yet, so everybody was there for the first session. I think it sets the scene, doesn't it, to get some data and we had a very illustrious panel of people. Obviously, we've got Scott from Consulting, who kindly puts together the report every year for the show. And he was presenting his findings, his key findings. Then we had, as I mentioned earlier, Sarah Dusek, co-founder of Under Canvas, now Few and Far, Enigma Ventures. I mean, God, she's the godmother of glamping.
She's powerhouse.
She is, and author now as well. And Todd Wynn Parry, Aramark, Holworth. I remember Todd the first glamping show we had at the Arapaho, we did a panel session and he was brokering the autocamp deals. So there's nothing that Todd doesn't know about this. He knows where all the bodies are buried. And then, of course, I can't, last but definitely not least, Whitney Scott from Walden. And she is just, wow, Whitney. I mean, she's amazing with her data analysis and her knowledge from years of operating through campgrounds in America and launching their Terramore brand. So everybody there had sort of was in different stages of their career. They'd not just made their first career in the glamping sector. They were in phase 2 or phase 3, and they could look at the data from different angles. Really fascinating conversations coming out of it and opinions, but in ways in which it could support the operators in the room to perhaps make decisions on being ready for group bookings in future, for example, was one area that we looked at. Obviously, price per night. How do you get repeat bookings? All of those thorny questions that no matter where you are in the world, you're going to face at some point or other.
And I think probably my favourite session was also at 8:30 in the morning on the second day.
Yeah.
Because when you're setting up your business, the minute you put your shovel into the ground, because you've got your permissions and you can start digging, you should start your marketing. And I've always said this to everyone I've spoken to. And one of the things you need to be thinking about at that stage is, what about your guest magnets? What can you put in place that's going to magnetize guests to book with you and is going to keep people coming back? So we had Anne Howard from Honeycheck, who is basically traveling the world from place to place, experiencing everything.
5,000 days they've done now?
Yeah, 5,000 days of traveling and staying in luxury. So they know a thing or two about what magnetizes guests. And then there's Kathleen Walsh from Outdoor Hospitality Group. And she, again, is someone who has been in this industry for so long and really knows her stuff. Dan and Virgo from Northgate Holdings, they manage multiple sites around America. And again, Whitney Scott, who was leading that panel, and together they just had a brilliant session.
So clever the way Whitney organized it with her little whiteboards and her lightning sessions. And so we about a day or two before the conference started, she said to us, didn't she, "Oh, could you find the Jeopardy music to play during my my lightning session?" So we're like, we kind of heard of Jeopardy, but obviously we don't have that in the UK. So we were madly looking up this music, weren't we?
And looking up the copyright issues, if there are any.
Yes, absolutely. But it all went really well. And they looked at it from different angles of what were brilliant ideas for people to add value, what were their favourite things. You know what I took away from that?
What?
I want a frozen margarita maker wherever I stay.
That does sound like heaven, doesn't it?
I don't think it's proper luxury unless I have a frozen margarita maker in my room. No, it was great. I love Kathleen as well. She's such a dry sense of humour, and she also really looked at the guest magnets as well from the female point of view, from the older female point of view as well, which I appreciated, because that's a demographic that's often overlooked. And so, from families, from sort of all types of young couples, we all concentrate on these demographics a lot, but there's a lot of older women traveling solo now and or in groups, and she highlighted that, which I thought was a great thing as well.
I think for me, one of the best things that came out were the conversations at the end when it finally finished and everyone knew it was time to go home and they kind of didn't want to go. There was definitely a few people trailing behind, but you got some wonderful conversations with people who wanted to just say what they thought about the show.
Born on 15 acres in the Okanagan Valley. This was my first Glamping Show Americas. It was absolutely the most wonderful 3 days of knowledge building, networking with others, meeting vendors, seeing all the structures in person. There's nothing really like actually going into these units and the touch and feel. You just gain so much knowledge by doing that. So this was imperative for getting started on the right foot. I would recommend coming here. I'll be here next year. I would recommend to everybody to come.
Hi, my name is Brendan. I am an owner and operator of the Mama Retreat up in Canada, Toronto. The show has been absolutely amazing for me. Everything from the speakers, so educational, so informative, to the exhibitors, very interesting structures. And I'd say the most beneficial thing for me that I've enjoyed the most is the networking. Beautiful people, a great tribe, a great community to be part of. I highly recommend it.
And so what would you say, Steph, was your favourite bit about the show?
Oh, probably the bit after my panel session was finished. I knew I could relax and listen to everybody else for the next day and a half. No, it was those moments when a video was playing and you were looking around the room and people were either taking photos or taking notes or really absorbed in the content that you had there. And it was such a good feeling to see them getting so much from the content that we provided for them, but also for the speakers as well, knowing that they were seeing how much people were getting. So it was a great thank you to the speakers and their time and trouble too. So that was a feeling of great satisfaction for me personally.
And I would have to say mine was a little bit later than that. It was when we were in the bar talking with a friend and we were having a lovely chat. And it turned out that somebody had bought us a drink to say thank you for organising the conference the way we had this year. And that for me was incredible because it's not often that organisers of events get thank yous like that, which are done so sweetly and so nicely and wholeheartedly. They didn't even ask for any recognition. They bought it and left. They didn't even tell us. We found out later on from the waitress. And I just found that just incredible. It just, for me, that made the entire event, that someone was bothered enough to do that, to say thanks.
That was such a classy move, I have to say. I think it's the only time anybody's ever like anonymously bought me a drink in a bar before. But that's
It's obviously not something done very often in the UK because I've never had that either.
no, it was wonderful. That and as we've mentioned, yes, the video and everything from Chris Jube, the glamping guy, when we came back, really touched me. I wasn't expecting. You expect to be behind the scenes, really doing a job like this, or running around with a microphone hoping it's going to work. But
Doing last minute changes to presentations that you weren't expecting, that kind of thing.
that kind of thing. So yes, it was a very rewarding experience, but also really lovely because the first time that we've been in with this particular team of people for a few days, and we had a really good laugh over the few days we were there, and felt very much welcomed as part of the team. So that was lovely too.
Absolutely. And I think as well, as like you said, I don't think I've laughed so much doing something quite as serious as this was, which was looking after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people and making sure that they had a good time and got what they wanted from the conference, but also had a laugh doing it. And, you know, the team is so much bigger than us. And there are so many people in the team who have worked their socks off making this an incredible event. And I know that they're all up for making it equally In fact, yes, we've raised the bar. And so now how on earth are we going to make it even better? But we're all absolutely on board to make it even better for next year. So I'm incredibly excited about that. And how do you think, Steph, we should approach that new agenda setting and event setting journey?
I mean, the most difficult thing, I think, can be having to say no to people sometimes as well, because we do get approached by quite a lot of people who want to speak, and we can't find space for everybody, or it's just not really, doesn't fit in with the agenda of what people have asked for. So you've got to employ a lot of tact and diplomacy, as well as looking at what's going on in the market, looking around at what's making the news, what the trends are. Obviously, we take the feedback that we will get from the attendees very seriously indeed. But yes, I'm just glad I don't do it on my own, because I think that having somebody in exactly your position that you can talk to about these things and work it out together, and they've got your back, that's it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it also means it's someone who you can have a nice gin and tonic with when things get a little bit hard.
Absolutely. But we do sound like alcoholics. I think gin and tonics.
Okay, maybe a lemonade every now and again.
But no, exactly. I mean, that goes without saying. So.
For me now, it's quite nice to be able to just take a bit of a deep breath, because we can't do anything until the feedback is in. And so this is quite a long feedback process in terms of people are asked for quite a bit of detail about what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, what they want to see, what is concerning them, what's really would be helpful for them in terms of how the industry is going, but also what they need as businesses or hopeful businesses within that industry. And so for us, there's absolutely no point to do anything until that's in. And it is a big document. And so when it comes in, there's plenty to do when it arrives. But for me, that's the foundational point. And as you said, yes, it's horrible to have to say no to people that they can't be on stage when they really desperately want to be. But we have to take it into consideration what people in the audience, what they're asking for, and what really matters to them. And so for me, that's step one, absolutely and utterly. And I know for you, you're unshakable as well, that's what we go forward with. And so I'm really interested to see what they're going to come up with, because they always come up with some new stuff. And it's really interesting to read all of the opinions of everybody who was there and what they want to see next year. I mean, that's just brilliant feedback, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the best. It's a great system of doing things, but also it sort of happens organically. I feel that people find us as well, and hopefully this year, because we've had some quite high profile people with big followings that have spoken, that will also raise the profile of the conference itself and bring more speakers in our direction that we can consider. And I know that some of the speakers themselves have offered, like Ben Wolf, to help suggest the people that they admire that are coming up through the ranks too. So yes, it's a challenge, but at least I feel that now in the next 12 months, I know a little bit more what to expect as far as the job is concerned, whereas the year just passed, it was all breaking new ground. So yeah.
Last year, the only stage I was used to organising was actually standing on stage and just doing my hour of speaking. And to me, that seemed like enough. But then to actually be then running various different panels and organising all the speakers, it has been quite a journey, hasn't it, over the last year? But the team at Emerald have just been so brilliant at making sure that we felt welcomed and also that we had everything that we needed to do the job. And I think you can't ask for more than that, can you?
Absolutely.
So what's next for you then, Steph, over the next few months?
Well, yes, I still start to prepare, for next year for other events really as well a little bit. I'm involved in the Glamping Show UK as well as the Glamping Show Americas, so that's in the background as well. I also have a small networking event called Eco Resort Network, which takes place in May 2026. That will take place in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand. So I've got to find speakers and sponsors and work on that one. So I've got a little bit of a lull now for a week or two, but it will soon be back back at the coal face again, chipping away. And of course, the magazines. So I've got the December issue for Glamping Business Americas, already started work on that. And another 5 issues of that next year. So yes, it's never a dull moment, Sarah.
Never a dull moment, absolutely. And I can completely relate because I'm also working on both my podcasts regularly and my business, which is all about supporting smaller businesses in their hospitality journey, because it can be quite lonely if you're in hospitality and you're not this large business that has lots of employees, but you're smaller, you're kind of in that decision paralysis, you don't quite know the direction to go, or you're questioning yourself constantly, maybe you're lacking in confidence. So for me, that's really important that I continue to support those people. And also, it's just really good fun. And I consider them to be friends now as well, which is really lovely. But also, doing events and doing marketing for businesses too, because I have a small team now that helps me do that. So as you have said, there's never a dull moment. Anyway, Steph, it's been lovely hanging out with you today. I love our chats, and I'm really looking forward to very, very soon talking to you about next year's show and everything going on in between. And I think all I can say on our behalf is that it's just going to be really busy and it's going to be really good. So I hope people join us.
Yes, and well done, Sarah. You did a great job.
And well done, Steph. You did an amazing job too. High five. See you soon.
Bye, love.